Welcome, LA Progressive friends and family. Dick and I are so delighted to have really as a regular, he's a regular contributor to the LA Progressive and a person that we are regularly interviewing now. We're so delighted because for me personally, it's really an educational experience to sit down and talk to Henry Giroux, who currently holds the McMaster University Chair for Scholarship in the Public Interest in the English and Cultural Studies Department and is a Paulo Freire Distinguished Scholar in Critical Pedagogy. So good to see you. So good that you're looking so well, Henry. You've written this fabulous piece that we published in the LA Progressive. It's titled Trump's Reign of Cruelty, Gangster Capitalism, and the Unraveling of the Social. Talk to us. Let's break it down.
Well, I mean, when I wrote this piece, two things came to my mind that I don't really see enough of in the various commentaries that are now emerging over the blitzkrieg of fascist policies that Trump has implemented, not to mention his concern about being a king and employing Napoleonic language, which suggests that he's above the law. And I think that we have so lost the language of democracy that we refuse to understand or to make clear anymore that what's at risk here is really the very notion of the social. You know, whether we're talking about institutions or we're talking about values or we're talking about the public good. I mean, no society can exist without shared values. It can't exist without institutions that provide interconnections. It can't exist by overriding individual interests that are utterly exaggerated and have no conception of social cost, with values that basically enshrine compassion and it seems to me a willingness to fight for each other. The second issue was this notion of violence. And I have a friend who once said that abstractions are a form of violence in their own way, because they don't get at the visceral nature of violence.
Mm.
And the way the body is tortured, immigrants put in handcuffs, children being pulled away from their parents, the police confronting people in doorways and humiliating them, dehumanizing them, and sometimes beating them. People who don't have food. I mean, the fact that 60% of Americans live from paycheck to paycheck. What does that mean? What does it look like? What does it mean to say that 25% of all seniors live on less than $15,000 a year? $15,000 a year. What does it mean to say that 85 million people are underinsured or uninsured? And it seems to me they're not abstractions. They bear down on the nature of life in ways that reproduce a machinery of social death. And I think that what I wanted to do in this piece was explore a whole series of categories that would make that clear, that would really, I mean, look, neoliberalism inevitably leads to fascism because it produces inequalities and concentrations of power that are so overwhelming that it really kills the very nature of politics, which is a social category. Fascism is not a social category, it's a form of domestic terrorism. And I've tried to say in this piece, we need a new language here. We really need a different kind of language. We can't say, oh, Trump is performing a blitzkrieg of oppressive policies. No, this is domestic terrorism. Trump is aligning himself with Elon Musk. No, this is really an upgraded form of fascism in which three men, basically white billionaires, control as much as 175 million people in the country. I mean, right? And they control the media. And so, I tried to put all these pieces together because in my work, and I'm not always successful, but I certainly believe that the truth lies in the totality. It lies in the connections. It doesn't lie in simply isolating individual problems. And it doesn't lie in the tepid language of liberalism. Liberalism is awful. It has no guts. It can't name the enemy. You know the old definition of liberalism? When a
Okay.
fight breaks out, they're the first to leave the room.
Mm.
Oh, no.
I'm
No,
sorry.
no, 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 I know
I,
that.
So,
I know there are certain rights associated with liberalism, and I certainly support them, but they don't support economic rights. And in doing that, they invalidate political and individual rights. Yeah.
we're certainly seeing all kinds of what I would call gratuitous cruelty and violence
Yeah.
from the Trump administration and his henchmen. It seems clear that Trump certainly and some of the people around him delight in taking a machete to people's jobs without much thought, with cutting off departments and insulting people, insulting the president of the Ukraine. But you seem to be saying that cruelty is endemic to the structure and isn't really about the personalities of these particular jokers.
I'm saying two things. I'm saying one, thank you, Dick. It really is endemic to the structure, no question about that. But it's also endemic to a mindset in which cruelty actually becomes a form of pleasure.
Right.
I mean, the fascist subject doesn't engage in cruelty because it just happens to be something that's instrumental and is associated with efficiency. It's something else, right? I mean, when you talk about when you say your body, my choice, right? I mean, my God. I mean, when you say things like, well, on the Israeli side, when you say, well, we have to mow the lawn, doesn't
Right.
matter if there are children there, we have to mow the lawn, right? That isn't just an escape from social responsibility, which of course it is when the social dies. Any notion of the social eradicates social responsibility, but it's also one of the few moments left, if you can excuse me, where this fascist subject comes alive. It comes alive in the emotion of cruelty. It seems to have its last breath can only take place amidst the reproduction of suffering, which it enjoys.
Yes, yes.
It
And
enjoys.
I wonder if, Henry, when you talk about this, it it strikes something deep within me
Yeah.
that says, I know what he's saying is true because I recognize that cruelty and that enjoyment of cruelty in these men that are in these positions. But I'm wondering, does it take a certain kind of gut feeling to recognize it? A kind of, having some kind of experience with that kind of cruelty? Why is it that we seem to be accepting of this?
Because cruelty has so overtaken the culture that it produces a number of things. One is a form of entertainment. It
Mm.
becomes a form of entertainment, and in doing that, it normalizes a kind of insensitivity, a sensitivity to cruelty that basically eliminates a sense of individual and social responsibility.
That's
I
right.
think that's one issue. Secondly, I think the question of cruelty as producing a particular kind of subject is a very dangerous category.
Mhm.
I think you have to be considered disposable in this country to understand part of this argument. As
Mhm.
imagine as a black woman
Mhm.
having seen those pictures of lynchings
Mhm.
where white people, are standing around and basically treating it as if
Mhm.
it's like a day out for entertainment.
It's a form of
That
movement.
That's the moment I'm talking about. And what I'm saying is the legacy of that moment has once again emerged in a different form without apology.
Mhm.
And I think to understand this, we have to understand how the culture has changed.
Keep
They,
talking,
they
keep it going because you're bringing up something that nobody is talking about, Henry. And people like me, people that are on the lower rungs of this social order, this social hierarchy that we have in the United States, we are hyper aware
yeah, that's right.
and
That's
trying
that's
to
that's absolutely right.
ourselves.
That's absolutely right. And that's why it's so dangerous, right? Because all of a sudden it doesn't resurrect a condemnation of cruelty. It represents that legacy of cruelty is so systemic
Mhm.
that it resurfaces in different ways. And now that we're in a fascist government, it's become a sign of pleasure. It's become something that we celebrate. They celebrate, sorry. It's become something so endemic to the culture that even a press that considers itself absolutely opposed to that does not have the courage to name it
Mhm. That's right.
because it would indict its own complicity.
Yeah.
I'm very concerned about this creation of the fascist subject,
Mhm.
that we see emerging, indifferent to human suffering, indifferent to policies that destroy democracy, indifferent to, turning Muslims in India into disposable peoples because of the religious fundamentalism, indifference to the racism that turns people into disposable, that turns working class kids into being disposable. I mean, the logic of disposability cannot be separated from the logic of cruelty, and the logic of cruelty cannot be separated from the logic of politics and historical, what I would call historical memory. You can't do it.
So I mean, I hate to give Trump more credit for anything really, but it seems to me that cruelty is infectious. I mean, 15,
Yeah.
20 years ago, Trump was sort of a buffoon on TV. I guess people in New York knew a lot about him, but the big thing everybody knew about him was you're fired. And
The
I
Apprentice.
watched that a little bit on The Apprentice, and I didn't watch it much because I knew I worked for a long time. That isn't how anybody fires anybody. That wouldn't go, you know. But then his next thing on coming on to the broad public scene was coming down those escalators
Mhm.
and complaining about the murderers
Rapist.
and rapists coming across the border, and I assume some good people insulting a whole group of people. But now it's well beyond Trump, where the people around him seem to delight on the whole thing about complaining about wokeism and DEI. Well, what are they really talking about? They're talking about black people and brown people and mostly black people. And they're saying, and all programs, affirmative action that have down through the decades have tried to put them on an even plane. And now they're ridiculing the whole thing, but not just Trump, all the people around him. And you're right. I don't think the media, I don't think the opposition has found a way to grapple with that effectively.
I mean, I think there's something else that is interesting, and that is, you know, when the lust for power is only connected to the language of dehumanization,
Right.
you add another register to this, not simply the register of enjoying the cruelty, because that's part of what being powerful is about. So that when we say we go to you're fired, in that moment, the thing that where people fail to realize is that there was another scene for The Apprentice when it first came out. It was the opening advertisement for The Apprentice. I show it in my classes, where Trump is in a limousine and he's driving through through New York City, through Manhattan, and the camera focuses on a homeless person on the standing on the ground, and Trump says, "Do you want to be like that, or do you want to be like me?" Right, and there it is. Right, we start to see how it emerges, and the me is basically not the me of, let's say, all of us who are trying hard to use that language. The me is white Christian nationalists and rich people.
Yeah.
That's the me. So you connect that to the elevator scene, connect that to The Apprentice of you're fired, right? And what you begin to see is a logic of cruelty linked to a logic of power that is about, in definition, two things. One, who qualifies to be an American,
Mhm.
right? And secondly, what do we do with those who aren't considered American? We
Mhm.
get rid of them.
Mhm.
Look, I've been looking at a lot of videos lately of Holocaust survivors.
Mm.
And the one thing they all say that has just strikes me as so powerful, they say this began with language.
Yes.
It begins with language.
Right.
Right.
And we don't take seriously enough
Mhm.
what both the source of this language, how it gets legitimated, how it gets endlessly reproduced, and how it becomes normalized.
Right. It
We don't
becomes
do
part of
that.
culture. Becomes part of culture. Dick and I, in the evenings, we watch television. And I am appalled at the amount of propaganda that is fed to the average American with these cop
Oh,
shows. And now they're incorporating more and more like torture as a form of entertainment. It's okay to watch someone, have their fingers cut off, or they are creating this sort of normalization so that we don't even recognize cruelty anymore.
I mean, it's really interesting because one of the things that Ron, you and I do every night is we watch NBC and CBS, right? As torturous as it is, I want to see both the differences between those two programs. David Muir, who asked that kind of that question of Trump, and clearly during the one of the debates before the election, and really riled Trump. All of a sudden now he barely ever talks about anything serious, ever. I mean, now that Trump is president, the pressure on that network is so obvious that whereas CBS, which I thought was even more conservative, has become more liberal. But in both instances, as Sharon is indicating, you sit back and if you have any sense of the world at all, you say, what world do these people live in?
That's
Are
right.
they for real? I mean, they must be on drugs. Have they been tested? I've heard as Billy Bob Thornton said in one film. I mean, have they been tested? I mean, this is not the world as we know it. This is another world. This is an hallucinatory world. They really have taken over the asylum, and it's very interesting because I'm watching Rachel Maddow last night. You'll probably appreciate this. She's okay, but she's a liberal, right? But she's a liberal left. But she listed all these newspaper headlines, local newspapers, in which people are saying, what's going on here? We're losing our jobs, right? And then they went through the polls that are coming out that are the lowest for any president in the history of the presidency. So your hope here is that when we talk about visceral violence, people are now feeling it. Now the abstractions, the empty lies, the control of the media. I want to hope that all this stuff, that the contradictions become so wide that maybe there's a mass movement here that can begin to curb this and slow it down, uh, you know, and people can get some courage and begin to act in the name of justice.
Yeah, I saw a news clip. A couple Republican town halls with their local congressman, and the Republican audience was giving him hell because they are
Yeah,
feeling the pain. Now,
yeah,
I hope that continues. I think with the head of the FBI and Hexeth and JD Trump
uh, uh,
or JD Vance, I think they will continue to step on their feet or some other part of their anatomy, and it'll blow up in their face. I hope, but I don't know. I
yeah,
mean,
no, yeah.
so many people voted for him. We all knew this 4 years ago that this guy was a train wreck. 8 years ago, but 48% of the country didn't know it, and now they're feeling the pain. Let's hope they feel enough pain.
I mean, look, in the article, I quote Sadie Smith. She has this concept of auto imprisonment, in which she says, where words don't liberate, they constrict, where thought itself is reduced to the binding poison of manufactured ignorance and consent. That's my line. Uh, and I think that in some ways, culture has opened up the possibility for politics like we've never seen before, because it's become clear it's not just about entertainment, it's about power. And so that even those people say, oh, the culture wars, we're so tired of it. I'm going to write a piece on this soon. I've been thinking about it, in which I want to say, look, culture is where the action is. That's where the action is right now. You want to change consciousness, change your language. You want to find outlets in which you can tell your story. You want to connect this to the lives of people who really are suffering so they can recognize themselves in that language, so they can understand. We need to use more videos. We need to have shows like these videos you have, these interviews that I watch on occasion. are unreal. You have people come on, they're alive, they're real people. They're not just print on a page. You can see their passion, you can see their concern. That moves people. We live in an ocular culture. We no longer live in merely a print culture. And until we begin to understand this and recognize that working class people and people considered disposable are far from stupid, as actually they're probably far more intellectual than the people who are running the country or the people who are producing the news narratives.
Yeah, yeah. So when I look at history, Dick and I, there's a lot of overlap in who we are, what we value. But one area where there's no overlap in is that I seem to be perpetually pessimistic, and Dick is optimistic. But I think that my pessimism is rooted in reality and in history. And so, being a member of someone that belongs to an oppressed group of people, my concern is when the shit hits the fan, and I shouldn't have used that word because we might get dinged by YouTube.
And anyway, when it hits, who is a fan anymore?
Well, when it hits the fan, the scapegoats take the hit. And that's where my real concern is, because I think whatever is going to happen with this administration, time will pass and there will be change. That's the one constant in life. There's going to be change. But does that change mean that me and people like me are going to experience some kind of really devastating harm?
I think there are two issues here. I mean, I think that one, I don't find anything wrong with pessimism as long as it leads to optimism.
Right.
Gramsci's saying, pessimism of the intelligence and optimism of the will, right? Makes a lot of sense to me. It means that you're not just talking about hope as a prayer, you're talking about hope as a militant form of engagement, right? You assess the problems that we're facing, and you talk about a future that basically is different from the one we inhabit, the present we inhabit now. And I do know this, there's no change without hope. That's for sure. And as I've said in many of my pieces, there's no sense of agency without hope and no sense of hope without agency. And I think that hope basically is constantly under attack to be transformed into hopelessness, which really is a learned way of depoliticizing people, right? As bad as it seems, change is always possible. Marx said history is always open, right? You never know, even in Greece, where they had that revolution and the left party came in there with disappointment, but they came in, out of nowhere, right? And I think that what people need to do is to say, hey, look, what do I want to do? Do I want to live on my knees and complain, or do I want to fight, knowing that I can go to bed at night and we do the best we can with the tools that we have? That's what we do. That's when I get interviewed and people say, you have any regrets? I say, yeah, I don't think I was radical enough when I was younger, And I don't want that to happen anymore. I don't want to sit back and say, "Oh, I don't want to get us off YouTube." I don't want to sit back and say, "Look, it's too much." I mean, I read this stuff and I'm depressed. It's overwhelming. It's overwhelming, But I am not going to let them defeat me because that's what they do. Right. That's precisely the point. This is not an existential issue. This is a political issue. They're engaged in promoting a form of learned helplessness,
exactly.
Which is a form of learned depoliticization. Right. Now, if they were really as powerful as they think, they wouldn't be banning books.
Yes.
If they were as powerful as some people think they are, they wouldn't be trying to shut down schools and turn them into indoctrination centers. If they were as powerful as if some people think they are, they wouldn't be going to Europe spreading this populist nonsense in ways that the Europeans are like saying, are they for real? I mean, we need more freedom of expression. These are the people who ban books. I mean, these are the people who claim that Nobel Prize winners shouldn't be read, who clamp down on ideas. And so it seems to me that for people who trade in misinformation, at some point that begins to choke their blood-filled mouths. And I want to believe that as time goes on, I think we're gonna see a massive degree of resistance in this country, Sharon. And I'll tell you why. Because what we're seeing, as I say in this paper, a red line has been crossed.
Right.
Unlike anything we have seen since Nazi Germany. A red line has been crossed. They're out of control. They are so confident, so abusive, so cruel, so overwhelmingly stupid in some ways that they don't think they need to negotiate anymore. Ideology doesn't matter anymore. It doesn't matter. They don't believe they have a base. They don't believe they had that base forever. Well, wait till the base loses Medicare.
Mhm.
Right.
What is it? Wait till it loses Medicaid. Wait till the prices in the markets because of the tariffs are so high, they can't buy toilet paper. Then we'll see what happens, you know?
Right.
Yeah.
Well, so this is delightful, Henry. We love reading your articles and talking here with you. Do you have any further things to say other than a big thank you?
Well, I want to encourage people to read Henry's pieces on the LA Progressive and wherever you can find it. We want to encourage people to subscribe, both subscribe to this video, the YouTube channel, or go to laprogressive.com to get more information about Henry's work and the other articles and other authors that we publish here. And the reason that we publish this is because my personal concern is that we don't have a populace that is steeped in this kind of information. We see that we're at a crisis point, and my concern is that it may go really south really fast because people just don't understand what is neoliberalism. What is fascism? I mean, I think that they're susceptible to falling for these tricks because they don't understand that we actually do have ways to deal with this.
I mean, at the heart of what you do is a central principle, and that is you can't have a democracy, a socialist democracy, or any kind of democracy without informed people. You can't do it. The knowledge is important. Secondly, it seems to me that if people can't translate their private troubles into larger systemic issues, they're going to be depoliticized.
Mhm.
It's as simple as that, you know.
That's right.
And thirdly, we need to resurrect a passion for fighting that basically allows us to recognize that we're in the midst of a counter-revolution.
Right.
You know, this is where the historical paradigm becomes very important. People say, oh, it's a paradigm shift now. Yeah, I get all that language. I'm not particularly moved by it. This is a counter-revolution. It's a counter-revolution against the 60s. It's a counter-revolution against difference. It's a counter-revolution against justice. And it's a counter-revolution against democracy.
Do you think it's a revolution against what Roosevelt did in the New Deal?
Oh, no question. No, the New Deal, the Great Society, they're elements of a left liberalism. But for the right, they're poison because they're about the public good. You know, look, any language that points to the commons as a value is at odds with a market that says that the commons and social responsibility should never be a part of this discourse. I mean, these are really evil people.
Yes, yes.
But part of the thing is so it's absolutely true that the elites want to do away with the public good.
Right.
But their base, the people that follow them, absolutely need the public good. They need the Medicaid. They need the Medicaid. Well,
Right. This is the great contradiction that opens up the question about what Paulo Freire once called the internalization of oppression.
Yes, absolutely.
Right? This is it. I mean, what happened to education?
Yeah.
I mean, they've been turned.
When you were talking earlier, I was envisioning a scene from the movie The Matrix, where you have all these people, their energy, what they provide in form of labor is being extracted from each individual, but they are not networked together. So you were talking about the importance of relationship and community and collaboration. That is what is being taken from us, and that's part of the commons. Is to be.
I mean, think of another language here. Democracy has to have a strong immune system. what happens when that immune system turns against itself?
Mm.
What are the forces that basically turn that immune system into something that destroys the body, destroys the mind?
Cancer. It's like a cancer.
It's a cancer called fascism.
That's right.
That's what it's called.
That's
And
right.
we are now at that stage where the immune system, it seems to me, has been so weakened that we have to find a way to bring it back.
Yeah.
You know,
That's wonderful. Thank you, Henry. Thank you for those images, and thank you for taking these complex concepts and breaking them down in a way that they're understandable for.
I think what I do is minor compared to what you do. I mean, I think that what you two do is such a gift to the possibility of justice. You know, I'm just honored to be on the program. That's all.
Thanks, Henry.
Thank you, Henry.
Well, we're looking forward to the next piece and learning more.
Thank you for sticking
Right.
around.
See you soon.
If you like
Okay.
the LA Progressive content and the discussions we have here, please consider clicking the subscribe button below and also give us a thumbs up. That helps to grow our audience by feeding the algorithm, which helps to get this content in front of more eyes. Thanks for stopping by. We really appreciate your support.